Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
We can be kind. We can be kind. So, gosh, I love that song. Considering what's the greatest challenge in your life right now? What's going on with you? What's up? What's the buzz? What's going on? What's the kindest response? The kindest response that you could have for other people in that situation, for yourself? The go-to for most of us is the defensive response. Putting up our walls, keeping ourselves safe. What would be the kind response? Would it be prayer? Would it be to ask for forgiveness or to forgive? To maybe just remove yourself from that situation or to let it go? What is it that your heart is telling you? That's what this practice is all about tonight. We've been on this journey together. This is the 4th week of Living Originally, this wonderful series of 10 practices that Reverend Robert Brummett has given us for personal transformation and for transforming your life. And so here on week 4, the practice that we're engaging in is universal benevolence. Universal benevolence. And this practice is centered in the greatest gem of truth that Jesus gave us. Jesus said in John 15:12, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." Love one another as I have loved you. And it's a great calling us up to that universal love for all. There are 3 interrelated practices that are part of universal benevolence that Robert Brummett gives us, and they are appreciation, kindness, and generosity. And so they all work together and they all build on each other. So I'll share with you about them. But first, the word benevolence. The word benevolence is derived from a Latin word which means a disposition of goodwill and kindness. Having a disposition of goodwill and kindness as your general outlook, the way that you show up in the world, goodwill and kindness. It's extending this to all persons and ultimately to all beings, all life. And so we know it's easy to feel benevolence towards our loved ones and our friends. The hard one is extending that benevolence to all beings, even those who seem to oppose us or disagree with us or may even seem to be against us, right? So what is this practice? How do we go about this practice of universal benevolence? So the practice is to keep your heart as open as possible, which is great when you're feeling good and you're in the safety and comfort of friends and loved ones. But it can be very challenging when you feel threatened or when your body is in pain or you're in an emotional or some kind of other pain is going on in your life. To be able to keep your heart open can really be a challenge. So we tend to close down our hearts when we feel threatened or when we're suffering. And when we do that, we go unconscious, which means we become reactive to life and we are not responding from our heart, but rather we're more impulsive to just whatever we're triggered to say or to do. And so the practice is that even when that happens, okay, we can include that in universal benevolence by recognizing it, that is happening, and returning your intention once again to keeping your heart open. Just returning again and again. Okay, I notice my heart's closed down. I'm feeling very defensive right now. This is hard, and I recognize I can give love to myself, and I can keep the intention to open up my heart. So what the practice is not so much about feeling what we think of as feeling benevolent, like feeling warm and fuzzy all the time. I can only imagine that those people who we think about who are known for being a presence of nonviolence in the world, like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela, that they didn't feel all warm and fuzzy when they were being persecuted. However, they kept their hearts open and they spoke from universal benevolence. So we can do that even in the midst of challenge, returning to the heart. And if you can't do this, that is when you can notice. Just notice, without judgment, without self-criticism, notice. My heart is not open, right? Noticing it and just seeing what are the circumstances that trigger me to close my heart down. That's something you can work with. That's something you can be with. That's something you can do some healing work around when you're conscious, when you notice it, rather than becoming unconscious, triggered, and reactive, right? I'm willing to be conscious. So when you notice that a practice in this series, the way that Robert Brummett has laid it out, if there's a practice that is challenging for you, then you go back to the previous practice. So if universal benevolence is becoming a stuck place for you, you return to the previous practice, which is forgiveness, and add in acceptance and awareness, the three practices that we've previously done. They build on each other. So now's the time how many of you are in spirit groups? Any of you doing a spirit group now, involved in spirit groups? So, yes, spirit groups. So now's the time in our spirit groups where we are looking to see what service projects we're going to do or engaging in those service projects. And this is our group practice of, yes, we feel love and openness and connection with each other. Now let's extend that into our community and find a way to serve. And so last year in my spirit group, our service project that we chose, we got to write thank you cards for the teachers and the staff at Pilgrim Academy, right? And on the other side of Richmond, a wonderful school that we've partnered with. And what was really neat about that project that I noticed is that I had this list of names that I wrote cards out to, and I did not know one of those people by face. I just had the name. And as I looked in my blank card, I opened my heart, I had something different to say for each one in appreciation, just kind of feeling into in that time, and they had been doing hybrid teaching with kids in class, kids online. They had quite a beginning of the school year at this time last year, and just feeling into that. And it taught me that we can express gratitude and appreciation, not having to know the details. We can just extend that, and that it is received, that heart energy is received, and it was so, we get so much appreciation. This year, my group is doing trunk and treat, so we're really excited about that. And that, we had talked a lot about that, different types of service projects that were really important, and wanting to help people who've had COVID and people who are struggling with cancer and different things. And when we realized that to bring kids joy, what a wonderful way to express our joy of being in our group, to bring kids joy and to show our generosity and of our time and our gifts and energy into bringing kids to our beautiful campus and experiencing that. So we're just really excited about that opportunity, and I'm sure that those of you who are in spirit groups have something wonderful coming up. Just showing appreciation, sharing kindness, and being a generous presence in the world. That's what we're all about here in Unity, and what we're doing through spirit groups, and of course through this practice here on Wednesday Night Satsang. So I want to go through these three areas that Robert Brummett has given us as part of the benevolence practice. So the first one, appreciation. So appreciation is the recognition of the quality and value of people and things. We did these 3 practices in our meditation tonight, as in meditation from Living Originally that I shared with you. And there's also an alternate meaning to appreciation, not only the recognition, but also the alternate meaning of increasing in value, like a house appreciating that it grows in value. So when we recognize the value that someone or something has for us, that recognition increases the value for their use and for them and for the use of whatever it is that we're appreciating. It increases in value within us and our awareness as well. So there's this twofold aspect of appreciation. The way that we know our own value as children usually is from our experience of being appreciated by others, especially our parents, could be our teachers, others that are authority figures in our life, and we take that in and it becomes our value of who we are and acknowledging what we bring to the world. And as adults, when we receive appreciation from others, that also may increase our personal sense of value as we take that in and allow that into our hearts. It's more important that we appreciate others in this practice because the spiritual practice of appreciation shows us that as we show appreciation to others, we actually increase our recognition of our own value, because now we've worked that muscle, that we see it in others, when you spot it, you got it, that is also present and inherent within us, and we begin to see and recognize that. So that is our encouragement to grow, if we want to grow a recognition of our own values, to begin to practice even more the recognition and appreciation of the value of others and really letting them know that. Because of our conditioning, we often have difficulty recognizing our own value because we can tend to be conditioned to look for our faults. Anybody had that experience to be conditioned to look for your faults? So one thing that I always kind of come back to as I think about conditioning in my own life and looking for my own value is when I was an actor in New York years ago. And I would go to these auditions, and I thought I was so special and unique and all that kind of stuff until I started going, and there would be like 50 girls who looked just like me in the same kind of outfit, same kind of hairstyle, singing very similar kind of songs. I'm like, oh, come on. I mean, you expect like 5, 10, I don't know, to be so many girls. I go, oh, okay. And they would say, oh, actors are a dime a dozen. They really were. It was tough being an actor as far as value. It felt undervalued. They call these auditions cattle calls for a reason. It's like they heard you in, they heard you out. And I remember one audition I went on, and it was for there was a casting director was not there. It was their intern was there, and the whole time she was on her phone, and I'm singing and I'm going, and she's not even looking at me. And at the end, I sang my heart out, and at the end, she looks up from her phone, she goes, oh, nice dress, by the way. And I was like, huh, okay. So, well, she did make the effort to show some appreciation anyway for my dress, but it just kind of factored into just all that, that kind of made a lot of meaning out of that. And I started going to Unity and learning all these positive affirmations and learning to love and value myself. And I would go on auditions and I'd meet people and I'd tell them all about unity and how excited I was and just how wonderful they were and that they needed to know that and they needed to learn, I'd love for them to learn unity and telling them all that. And it was over time that I realized I had a lot more energy around the sharing of unity than the auditioning part, and that I might want to put some more energy and effort in my life into pursuing that, because obviously I had a lot of passion there. And it directed me in a certain way, but that was a big shift for me in knowing my own value and valuing other people who were formerly my competitors, and just loving them and getting excited about being there with them and that kind of thing. So that's that shift into appreciation from my own experience. So there's a psychological level and a spiritual level to appreciation. The psychological level is when we experience value by receiving appreciation, and the spiritual level is when we experience value by giving the appreciation to others. Robert Brummett says, that which is innate in us can best be discovered by expressing it to others. By expressing it to others. So that's our first part of the practice of universal benevolence. And the second part is kindness. Kindness, we can be kind. So appreciation leads us into kindness, because appreciation is more of an inward experience, whereas kindness is more of an action. Kindness is defined as a friendly, warm-hearted, and empathic nature, and is derived from the Old English word that references the natural feeling of kindness towards your family, that it's much easier to experience being kind to our own kind, our family, right? So universal benevolence extends our own kind to be every being, recognizing our own kind, the divine in every being. That makes us all one. Appreciation, like I said, is primarily internal. Kindness is both internal and external, and there are really no limits to the possibilities of extending kindness to others. The third practice is generosity. Generosity is a natural outgrowth of the kindness, and that's defined as the willingness to give liberally and give often, to be just in that mind state of being on the side of giving. Just always thinking, how can I give? It's also a synonym for generosity is magnanimity, which literally means having a great soul. So this practice of generosity is considered to expand your soul. The more that you give, the more that your soul is expressing in the world, and therefore you have an expansive experience of it. And there are unlimited ways, like I said, to express generosity: your time, talent, treasure, your attention. It's an action, but it begins with the attitude, willingness to give at every opportunity, to just really be open and willing to give. And this is how Shakespeare put it. It is twice blessed. It blesses him that gives and him that takes. So the generosity is a two-way street, that the person who is giving is blessed in the giving. That's why if somebody offers you a gift, you want to receive that gift and know how to receive it with an open heart. No, you don't need to do all that too much, or whatever the kind of ways we deflect gifts, to recognize that it's a blessing for the giver as well as the receiver of the gift. So allowing them to give that blessing to you and learning how to receive. So many of us are good givers, but we need to learn how to receive. So that's that practice also, learning how to receive generously as well as give generously. So while it's generally generosity is practiced towards others, we also practice generosity towards ourselves, both in our attitude and our actions. And this is not an egocentric practice. It's not meant to make us superior in any way when we practice generosity to ourselves, but to really appreciate ourselves as equal to all. and appreciating our uniqueness. And it's important to be healthy with our self-care, to be generous with ourselves, and particularly generous in forgiveness and letting go, and not being so critical with ourselves as well. We want to be generous in that aspect. We need a healthy ego to function, and we also need a healthy body. So these are important for our spiritual growth, to remember that we need both a healthy ego and a healthy body. If there is any kind of deficiency in the ego structure, where there's been some trauma, where there's been a wounding there, that psychotherapy, some other healing modality is very helpful in this. So just to consider that. There's a wonderful workshop that Esther Nicholson talked about on Sunday that she's bringing to us in a couple weeks on Sunday when she comes to speak, that is healing the wounds of trauma that can get in the way of us fully expressing all that we are in the world. I'm looking forward to that. It looks really good. So that's something to consider, that we have those resources here. Spiritual practice, it takes us beyond our identity of the body and of the ego, and we need to have healthy body and ego in order to, as healthy as, bringing that awareness of wholeness into our awareness of self in that way. I want to share with you a wonderful story of universal benevolence that is from Robert Brummett's text, and it is centered on a verse from the Dhammapada, which is a sacred Buddhist scripture, and the verse says this: "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law." This verse was chanted more than 10,000 times in Cambodia in a refugee camp, and the people who chanted this were people who had been most afflicted. This verse was chosen by a respected Cambodian monk whose name is Maha Ghosananda. He had visited refugee camps where thousands had fled from Pol Pot's regime. There were 2 million Cambodians, which were 25% of the total population of Cambodia, who died in a horrible Holocaust led by Pol Pot's regime that began in 1975, and it lasted 20 years. Every family in this camp had lost children, had lost spouses, parents to this genocide, and their homes and temples were completely destroyed. Pol Pot had desecrated Buddhism in this country. And so it was amazing that when Maha Ghosananda offered this experience, he invited these people, and that so many showed up for the ceremony. Maha Ghosananda sat in silence up on this platform for quite some time before them, and then he started chanting this verse: "Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law." And he chanted it again and again and again. And one by one, the Cambodians began to join him in the chanting. And these people had as much cause to hate other people as anyone on the earth. Yet as they chanted this, it served as a healing balm, and they began to weep and weep and weep. They had been wounded, they had been oppressed, they had been made homeless, they had been crushed by the pain of war, and yet they found healing in this simple prayer that proclaimed the ancient truth of love that was greater than all the pain that they had seen and they had felt. Maha Ghosananda was a spiritually awakened person. And when you're spiritually awake, when you're fully awake to your origin, you will naturally express universal benevolence. It just will flow from you. This is a transformative practice to bring forth this expression. And as you practice universal benevolence, you may notice that the ego's hidden attachments also show up. Your resistances also show up to your conscious awareness. So as we give, as we appreciate, as we're kind to ourselves, to others, any resistance will show up. And how can we love ourselves and others through that is the practice. We want to simply recognize the resistance without resisting the resistance. You notice it. Be willing to experience it, because beneath that resistance is an unhealed wound that wants to be brought to light, that wants to be healed. There's some unfelt pain that we can feel in the moment. And we might think, I don't want to feel pain. Why would I want to do this practice and feel pain? And what Robert Brummett tells us is that when we allow ourselves to feel the pain from that wound that brought up the resistance, there's far less suffering for us in seeing and feeling it than in that resistance being underground in the shadow and operating behind the scenes and causing us to be reactive and wounded by life. That this is a way to bring healing to that, and it's a process that takes time as these things show up and as our souls are ready for that healing in the right and perfect time. So resistance can also arise in our life conditions, and he shares this story of a woman who came to him, Robert Brummett, who came to him in great confusion. She said, ever since I asked God to make me a more loving person, all these terrible people have come in my life. What's wrong? I can only imagine Robert receiving that and him just very calmly explaining to her that perhaps there is nothing wrong and perhaps her prayer was answered, although she wasn't seeing it that way. These people who she thought were terrible, giving her an opportunity to practice universal benevolence, appreciation and kindness and generosity. So as you practice universal benevolence, you will come to return your awareness to your original nature, which is appreciative, which is kind, which is generous. That's who you are. So there was only just this other that was learned or conditioned that you're becoming aware of and letting go so that your true nature can flow. And the more you do it, the more the practice will become natural to you, and you will experience the greater joy that lies in practicing benevolence in all that you say and do. Namaste.
Thank you, Reverend Jeanmarie. Woo, that was fun. Right. I played around. You got me started in wordplay. Right at the beginning when you did benevolence. And we both share a background in Catholicism and therefore Latin, and so. Benevolence, meaning goodwill, it kind of made me play with that a little bit. Goodwill is something that we carry with us. I mean, I always think of it as, having goodwill towards others. It's like a volare. It's like something that's a flow that wants to come through me to give to others, but when you flip the word around, that you will good for others, then it comes from an entirely different place, and I had never really thought of it that way, that it's, if I decide to will good for others, then there is some kind of a push that's coming from me, and to give good everywhere, and that it's not about deserving. It's really about, finding something of value, the appreciation to do that. So I was playing a lot with those words, and kindness, I never saw kindred in there. I never saw, that base. You said when you were talking about kind, it being familial, being connected to family and kin and all of that. And I thought, because it's relatable, because we generally care about our family, people who we're related to, people we live next to, people we can identify with, And, just if we just saw everyone that way, maybe that's where our vision of kindness would come from. I don't know. I was playing right over there in that chair with those words, and you just gave me lots of, mind bubbles, popping up, thinking of all kinds of ways I could see the joy of being able to live in that a little bit more without trying to figure out the valuation around me. Does that person really deserve that from me? Is that expected? Does it matter? All those, details of trying to figure that out instead of just knowing that that's the fun thing to do. That's what we're here for, right? So thank you for starting us off with some great wordplay.
Thank you. You brought in some other things I hadn't thought of.
I heard it in your lesson, though, so you really did that, so thank you.
Yes, it was inspiring. It's nice to have a cheery topic, right?
Yes.
And you really went with it. It was beautiful. When I conducted Portland Boy Choir for 15 plus years, we operated out of core values. Because, for boys, it's good just to have a simple something to kind of attach to that it's sort of a social code in the way we be with each other. And the 5 core values were excellence, because we were a musical organization. I am the way I am. And then integrity, authenticity, and kindness, and joy. And I would tell the boys overtly, I said, the reason kindness is part of our core values is because our culture does not teach men to be kind. Our culture teaches us to dominate one another, to actually be mean to one another, to assert our place in the world by being stronger and faster and compete, and to actually weave kindness into our daily moment-to-moment practice is part of what it is to be a gentleman. And I live by that now. But I love your talk, though, and also bringing in appreciation and generosity. And toward the end of what you were sharing, especially when you were talking about generosity, I was reminded of Viktor Frankl. Now, I'm not a super whiz on all of the subtleties, so if I don't get it exactly right, just go with the story, because the story is great. But I'm pretty sure most of this is true, that when he was in the concentration camp, and they had stripped him of everything, literally everything, and all he had left was his wedding ring. And they saw, you must remove it, as if that's this is really going to get him, right? This is going to break this man. And because, he was devoted to his wife. And he removed his ring, and whether he said it outwardly or he reported about it later, I actually don't remember. But the story is that he said, you will not make me hate you. You can take my ring, you can take my clothes, you can even tumble my spirit, but you will not break my capacity to love, even in this situation. And when I think about that sometimes, and I'm thinking, okay, you go. That's the way you treat a bully. And I'm gonna stop there, except to say that this last weekend I had a high school reunion, and it was a rich, wonderful experience. But I had an opportunity of crossing paths with 2 of the bullies of my high school, and how I coped with them then, and how I had an opportunity to sort of reassess in this situation, and how much energy I invested in protecting myself around them. Not physically, not even then was it physically, but emotionally and mentally. And I had a little of that going on even this weekend, but listening to your talk, I'm realizing, no, that's not hurting them. Me protecting myself doesn't have anything to do with it. And I can be generous of spirit here. I can lead with love. I can release it just as quickly. Then I'm left with an open heart.
Yes. Holding that intention, no matter how you're feeling in the inside.
You know, I was also so impressed with the, with the mantra of releasing the hatred, and that, I don't remember the exact words, but it had to do with, hatred is not released by more hatred or by feeling hatred, but the tears that came from the people who simply repeated the mantra of truth, the universal truth of it, and began to repeat it, began to melt themselves and into tears and releasing. I feel that what they were releasing, of course, was their realizing that hatred was hurting them, that it was the poison they were holding that was causing their suffering, as much as what they'd suffered through, and the loss, that the hatred was optional, and that they could let that go, and feel the healing, and also the largesse. I think we get so much bigger when we let go of the smallness of pointed retribution, revenge, hatred. When we won't let them get away with it, we don't let ourselves heal either. And we get stuck in that transaction. We talked about that in forgiveness, that same thing. So I'm just always so blessed and amazed by all the ways that forgiveness sneaks into the conversation, because it is the universal healing tool, and it's always the right answer, and how it always blesses us and releases us back into freedom and hugeness. I just think greatness, a greatness of our hearts, and I felt tears just thinking about them sitting in tears. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah. You just imagine like the ripples of that healing going out across their country, just all of them sitting there and chanting. Powerful.
Well, I'm going to continue to cultivate these three principles: appreciation, kindness, and generosity, because it just seems so more than wholesome. It's life-giving. Just the very idea of it is life-giving, and is so applicable to most human circumstances, maybe even all. If you're feeling great, if you're feeling love and gratitude, then appreciation, kindness, and generosity, it just flows effortlessly. And if you're feeling a little friction in a certain circumstance, and you call back those principles, it doesn't. There's not a catch. It's not like it costs me anything to be generous of spirit. I'm not giving up my center of self. My self-esteem is not compromised by being big-hearted in the face of adversity. That I'm going to live into that principle.
Yeah, just simply sending someone love or wishing them well, that's an expression of that universal benevolence that we all can do, that doesn't cost anything and allows us to be free.
Willing good, yeah. One other quick question, just as we close and get ready to go into our prayer time. I'm just very curious. The intern who complimented you on your dress, did you call you back?
No, that was, nothing came from that at all.
Well, all I have to say is their loss, our gain. That's how I see it. So.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.